we need to talk about Oscar. That race in Baku was one of the most beautiful races of the recent past. Anyone as elite as Max or Lewis would have definitely been proud of that race themselves. The way Oscar drove that race, soaking up the pressure, making the right moves, whispering his tires, and at the end of the race, the composure, he said, "Yeah, thank you guys, well done. How do I say thank you in Azerbaijanian?" It just showed a character, a cool, calm, steely character that is definitely no number two and a up and coming 100% a future champion. But all this after McLaren just said, yeah, we're going to bias Lando for the rest of the season. Yeah, this might be the case for 2024, even though now the points gap is even smaller. But where does this leave McLaren for 2025? Are McLaren at the dawn of a Hamilton and Nico problem? Welcome to the channel, you beautiful people. My name is Lucky. You guys know why you're here. We're here to talk about the sport that you and I love. So Oscar's really a rookie. He's only had 1.5 seasons so far, about 30 odd races, 8 podiums, and already 2 wins. But does that mean that his ceiling is way above Lando's? At least that seems to be the chat in some of the circles within McLaren. But does that make actual sense? I think so, because Lando's had 7 seasons already, and Oscar is definitely giving Lando a challenge in especially the second half of this season. So that means that Oscar had some challenges last year with tyre wear. This year it seems like he's managing it amazingly. Yes, Hungary, the third stint was challenging, but the first 2 was amazing. If you look at Monza, his tyre maintenance was awesome. If you also look at Baku, it's a masterclass in terms of tyre maintenance. Yes, he had clean air, but at the same time, driving with that amount of pressure and making sure that he has the mental capacity to think, to maintain the tyres and be crafty so that he gets relatively that 6 to 7 tenths every time that Charles and him go down the straight. That is experience, that is racecraft, right? So he is growing by the day, and looking at kind of qualifying stats against Lando, that might be misleading, because there were instances where ultimately that Oscar was not necessarily prioritized. And forget about quali, if you think about races, he's been outdone compared to Lando. Look at Silverstone. I honestly think Oscar would have won that race. And there are these moments that I almost think that Oscar's better in the wet than Lando now, right? Because he seems to have found the grip in Silverstone, and I think he did something similar in, was it in Spa? Well, or Canada, I can't remember. And then down in Australia, I think he was asked to swap places with Lando as well, right? So the points gap doesn't even potentially tell the full story. But long story short, my first point is that Oscar has a higher ceiling in terms of performance than Lando, if he is already on par with Lando after a year and a half in the sport. Number 2, I think, is instincts and racecraft. The move that he did on Lando in Monza, the move he judged to perfection post-race, of course, saying 50-50 in Baku. These are signs of absolute intentional, instinctual drivers who would definitely have the quality of becoming a champion. You don't necessarily see that from every type of driver, and I think these are the kind of moves that Max put on Lewis and Lewis put on Alonso in their respective rookie or early seasons, right? Yes, Lewis is known for a clean racer, but he's not shy of making these moves, right? So Barcelona on Sainz, for example, or opportunistic moves when they have the confidence in the car. These are the moves that ultimately make or break some of the races. So Oscar's now evidently making those moves. Even Hungary was an example, right? He had the opportunity, took the lead at the start, sailed away. Was asked to swap around, but that was a function of team strategy messing up. Instincts are key, and he's got those right instincts, and almost a cool and composed set of instincts. Number 3, the killer within. I think Oscar's definitely has a killer in him, and I think most champions do. The Schumachers, the Sebs, the Hamiltons, the Maxes definitely have a killer within. And I think if I compare Lando and Oscar, Oscar's definitely got a bigger killer in him than Lando. If roles were reversed and Oscar was asked to give up the race win in Hungary, I doubt he would have. Yes, he did mention, yes, for the best of the team, I would give it up. It would be hard. But if they were actually in that situation and was asked to give up the race win, especially now, right? Given that they're only about, 30 odd points between them, would he really give up a race win now? I think it would be challenging, and I don't think he would. And I think those are the moments that make a champion. So think about Sebastian Vettel and Oscar Piastri's now mentor and manager, Mark Webber, multi-21. Yes, Seb apologized after the race, but the race win was done and he won his championship. So I think you need to have it, and that is a bit more prominent in Oscar than in Lando. Number 4, rookies now. I think majority of the rookies now compared to the older generation are relatively cut from a different cloth. Look at Ollie, look at Lawson, look at Colapinto. All of these, and Antonelli, right? They seem to have a better way to adapt to F1. Whether that may be because they have better media training, whether they have sports psychologists already, and dieting and nutrition is already sorted out for them. Whatever that may be, they seem to be better prepared. Or maybe the F2 cars are a bit similar, right? Because as Colapinto mentioned, the main thing is tires and experience. Right? The rest, the speed, if it is inherently in you, they'll find a way to extract it from the machinery. And Ollie mentioned this as well. Haas, Ferrari, the cars kind of they're similar. That's a good thing. I just need to drive the cars in a similar way, right? So yes, ultimately with time and in terms of tire wear and reliability, they may be different, but in terms of transferring pure raw talent into pace, there seems to be a smaller gap, and there seems to be a less need for extensive testing. And third, from a psychological perspective, they seem to be more prepared because of potentially the amount of exposure they get in F2, and also the fact that they potentially have the right support system around them. Number 5, guidance. I think having Mark Webber around him, there's a lovely podcast with Mark Webber, Eddie Jordan, and David Coulthard. I'll link it on the description. I think it's lovely to see a little bit of a psyche into Mark Webber, right? Because he's definitely gone through these situations. He's raced in multiple different arenas, and he's also had to manage challenges such as dealing with Seb and becoming a number 2 driver, right? So I think getting the right type of mentality embedded in someone like Oscar early on and having that mentorship would also definitely benefit him. Number 6, composure. This is one of the main reasons I like Oscar. How calm he is in the cockpit, how reflective he is after the races, how his emotions are almost moderated. He's almost like a monk in terms of execution, both at success and failure, which I think gives a little bit of a window into his mindset as well, right? So he's so moderated so that he gives himself the best chance to extract the best out of himself. So even if you have a loss, bouncing back the next day would potentially be much easier, right? So at the end of Baku win, he was like, yeah, how do I say thank you in Azerbaijani? When he lost in Monza, yes, he was frustrated, but frustration seems to be, I'm really frustrated. But like, it's not about throwing toys out of the pram and kicking it around and being growly over the radio and being extremely upset about it, right? So I think he's a much more calm and collected individual, which also potentially means that he ends up having much more willpower and mental capacity during the race to make those judgments outside of just simply thinking about how to drive the car the fastest I can. So how do you think about strategy? Where do you think you need to make the moves? Where do you think you need to push? How you can ultimately maintain the best amount of tires so that you could run for the fastest lap? All of those split-second decisions, right? So that leaves more and more mental capacity to utilize for the things that are just outside and makes you a championship winner. Looking across all of these topics and into 2025, I get the feeling that McLaren is definitely looking into a Hamilton versus Nico 2.0 or a Lando downfall. And do you know what? At this point in time, I know I'm going to upset a lot of Lando fans, but I think it's more predictable to be a Lando downfall and an Oscar Piastri 2025 championship. That's all for this video. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Peace. Ciao.